Hello and very welcome to this video where we are going to talk about AutoCase creation. What is that? What we're trying to achieve? So for that, I prepared a small slide so we can talk about the processes in the first place, and then we're going to see how we make that possible. What is our goal? Our goal is to convert an email sent by a customer to a company automatically to a case and assign it to a queue. A lot of jargons I have used, but we're going to get through all of them in this video. But before that, we're going to start with a story. The story is a customer has a problem, and so for that problem, they email it to that company. And this is something that you're already familiar with. You may have had also issues with products that you have bought, and what you do is you basically send an email to the company. How the process looks like when that happens in real life for companies. Let's explore that story. So when you send an email to them, those emails we need to also sync with Dynamics 365 customer service because imagine the hassle that they need to receive the email in Outlook and then they go back to Dynamics, they create a case for that in Dynamics, they copy the content from the email to Dynamics. All that is too much work. Yeah? So what we're going to do is we're going to sync that email to customer service, and then we'll also automatically create a case from that email. So imagine the level of automation we're talking about. An email is received in an Outlook, but instead it's sent to Dynamics or it's synced with Dynamics, I would say. So the agent doesn't need to leave the customer service app. And that's where he doesn't or she doesn't have to use the email to create a case from that memory. So we're also going to convert that email automatically into a case so that the agent has something to already start working on for it from. And that case will already be linked with that email in case he or she needs to have more information. And then what we're going to do is, this is something that I also talked in my previous video, we're going to talk about queues. What exactly are queues, how we're going to set that up, and how we're going to add members to that, and what's the benefit of using queues. And once we understand queues, we're going to see how we can add a case to a queue. Because why? The essence of using queues is that you want your task force, your agents, to be able to work in a segregated way. So I have platinum agents working for my platinum customers. I have gold agents working for gold customers. It's just the way how you treat your customer. And so for some of your customers, you have promised to serve their cases faster than others because those customers have either paid for that service for faster service resolution, or they have bought so many products that they're entitled to have a higher service level agreement. What are service level agreements? That's a different story altogether, and that we're going to see in a different video. But the idea is to just have a segregated way of working. And once we have set up queues, we're going to move to see how we can add a case to a queue. Because imagine if I'm a manager and if I get a case from a platinum customer, I want to be able to add to the right queue. So if I add it to a queue for platinum, all my platinum agents know these are the cases that are in the list that I need to pick from. And we're going to see an example on how that looks in real life in the system. But on a process level, this is what I mean. And then the last part, we're also going to automate that part where we not only create a case all the way from an email, but also add it to the relevant queue automatically. In that case, you take away all the hassle of having an email in Outlook, creating a case for that in Dynamics, and then assigning that case to a particular queue. That is really a lot of work, especially for imagine companies where you have hundreds of cases coming every day. This is really a lot of work. So we're going to see how we're going to automate all of this end to end. Okay, so I'll take off the slide and we'll use it as and when it's necessary for a bit of context. But we're going to start with shared email address. So what are shared email addresses? Shared email addresses are email addresses that can be used by more than one user. So info at acompanyname.com. So in this case, I'm going to use my own domain, which is Ska-doosh. So if I'm receiving a lot of emails and I have a lot of agents who need to work centrally from one email address where all the customer queries are coming, I'll create a shared email address and then I will add members to those shared email address. Normally, you wouldn't be setting the shared mailboxes yourself or the shared email yourself. But just for your information, I'm going to show you, if you navigate to this link, you have the option under Teams and Groups to create a shared mailbox. It's super easy. Yeah? So normally a Dynamics consultant normally requests it to an organization. I would like to have a shared mailbox created, or probably the company already has it. So I can't expect a big organization that's already is functioning and has a customer service support to not have this email address. But this is just for your information. So how it normally works is you can click on add a new shared mailbox and say test at Ska-doosh.com and checking the availability, and it's all good. And I say save changes, and there you go. Our shared mailbox is ready. And now you can also add members to it. What this means is that all the users you add here as members, so I'm going to add John Doe um, as a member. And what happens is that when you do this, in their Outlook, they would already see one more section of test, or what I see right now is customer support. Let me see if I can quickly show you how the two mailboxes that I've already set up. I'm going to delete this because this is garbage. But customer service and customer support order, these two shared mailboxes I've already created, and it works perfectly for me. And it also appears in my Outlook. So let me quickly see if I can pull up that information for you. Okay. Okay. So this is my Outlook, and you see those two mailboxes are automatically added here. Um, and yeah, if I were to read the emails, or any member who this is shared with, they will have access to these mailboxes. In the mailbox, you see, I've also already sent some delivery problem issues for my personal email address here, just for testing purposes, right? So I'm going to put that back. Now this gives you a flavor of how shared mailboxes work. So what we're going to do is, now we come to our next step. So if you go back to our slide, our next step is, so we set up the shared mailboxes. Now we're going to see how we're going to receive emails for this in Dynamics. The easiest way to set up this functionality is using the new awesome guided channel setup from Microsoft. I would definitely recommend you to use this. It can also be done separately, but this one is quite handy to work with. So what you need to do is whenever you open a URL of your Dynamics environment, let's say it opens your customer service hub, and if you want to switch to the administration part, all you need to do is just click on this app, and you will see customer service admin center. And when you click this app, it will show you all the navigation options for this app. And here we have the guided channel setup. And this is very handy. So we're going to see it now. I'm going to, before I start with the setup, copy the email address of info@skadoosh.nl. And then I'm going to say start new. And I'm going to call it email to case, right? And I say it's a channel type email, and you see there are multiple channel types. We're not going to get into any of these other channels because this is totally focused on emails. Then we say next, continue setup, and it then informs you that you need to also set up user accounts so that they have proper licenses. Super important, you need to give them proper licenses and proper security roles. Both of them are probably a jargon for you, but license basically is a way for Microsoft to ensure that the users are capable of using Dynamics, and security role offers them the right privilege to see the relevant things for them. Because in I'm not getting the security role, sorry, but that's a completely different story altogether. But imagine that's has to do with permission. So this one you need to do it yourself separately. And once you have done this part, it asks you to set up agent mailbox enablement. A jargon, please avoid. I'm not going to get into this one. This is not super important, but this is also on a high level. It allows you to configure the email addresses of your agents so that they can also send email addresses from their official email address. But again, that's not for this one. Huh? So we're going to move to next. And now it says, let's talk about your shared email address. And it says you can do blah 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 blah. So there are some synchronization methods, because an email address is basically an asset of an Outlook. So if you want to have it synchronized with Dynamics, server-side synchronization or email router is the way for you to do that. You always choose server-side synchronization. This is the most recommended way for you to sync emails between Dynamics and and Outlook. So I have already enabled that, but if you need to do that, you need to follow these instructions, and that should be okay. It's super easy. And now it asks you to create shared mailboxes. We just saw how you can create shared mailboxes, and then we can enter that email address. So this is what I copied, and now I have my shared mailbox also specified. And this is the part where it says, please define a queue. So in this case, we're going to say, this is the name of the queue. Email queue, SQ, email to case, email queue. Fine, this is okay. The type is private, which it should be, and then info@skadoosh.com. This is I'm the owner, etc., etc. And then I say next, and then it says now that you've defined the queue, let's enable um, the mailbox. And this is something that you need to do separately. So when it shows you this option, I would recommend you to click on the mailboxes and go to that mailbox that we just created. So I am going to search for email. So you can search it by the name of email. So this is what we created, right? By the way, if you want to search something, you can put an asterisk in the first. If you want to search it in the middle, so I knew that it had email in the text. And this is, you see my queue, and it has an email address like this one. What I can do is I can open this, and now it opened the mailbox. This is how it looks like. Before it's run, it shows not run. So what before you enable a mailbox, this is the status what you find. So for enabling a mailbox, you need to click approve and then OK. Because I'm the global administrator for Outlook and for my tenant, I'm able to do that. But I know for some organizations, you may not be the global admin. You may be a consultant with a system admin role for the environment, and that will not be good enough. So you need to have it approved by the relevant people. Okay? There are documentation also on this, but it needs to be a global administrator. So now that I've approved it, now I can click on test and enable mailbox. And if it says success, then it's all good to go. Okay? So I will say, okay, test and enable. And when I do that, it will do some kinds of testing. And you can have a look here and here if the configuration was success. Basically, you have to wait until this becomes success, right? Until it does that, we'll see where we are in our process. So we have talked about shared mailboxes. We have talked about syncing email addresses with Dynamics 365 customer cases. And this is about where we are. So for us to be able to sync emails for this address with Dynamics, this is what we're doing. You have to have it created as a mailbox using queues or also separately. But this is what I show is a recommended route. So you can, if you follow this, the chances that something would go wrong is relatively low. Yeah? And then it is super important to have it approved like we were doing earlier and test and enable. So let's check if it's done. It's still not there. Let me see. Yes, I see it. It's a success. Now we're good to go. So we see that for it's enabled for incoming and outgoing both, which is very nice, right? So let's first test before we get further with the guided channel setup. Let's test. I'll in the background because sending an email takes a bit of a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to send an email to this email saying I have delivery issue. I'm sending an email right now, and this is what the email looks like, and I'm sending it now. And I'm going to send it from my live. Never mind. Okay, change. Okay, send. Okay, so it's sent now. In the meantime, we'll see if we are able to receive the emails yet. What's also important is I have sent the email. It should appear now any moment, and we will look into that. But let's complete this. What it says that, have you verified that the test run was successful? Yes, we did. We saw the message of success, and we can proceed further. And this is where it already asks you, do you want to create automatic case creation rules? Yes, definitely. We are super interested in because we want to automate the whole process. So we say email to case auto. And condition name is this. For now, I'm not going to add any condition, but you can always add a condition. If the condition is blah, 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 then do this. If the condition, and that's more detail. You will explore it yourself, but you can have conditions saying if the email is not recognized or if the email doesn't exist in the database, don't create a case, etc. There are a lot of logics. So I could really come up with millions of them, and that's why I don't want to go in that direction. Now, what it's doing is creating an automatic case conversion rule where it actually appears. I'll also show you that because you don't necessarily have to go it via the guided channels. Earlier, before we had this, because this is a very new feature, I think they rolled it out in the last couple of months. But earlier, you could just open, yeah, okay, it's done. And then queue definition, yes, fine, assignment method is okay. And then it is asking if you can add users to them. Yes, please add Suyash Pandey to this and click on next. Yes, and next. Okay, so this all setup has now been completed for us. Okay, so what we've already done, and it was such a super easy automation for us, right? So we did not have to do any kind of development work or anything else. For a functional consultant, I think this is quite an awesome and handy tool to enable this automation of email receiving in Dynamics and automatically converting into a case. Okay, while it does that, let's go back to Dynamics and look into our activities because in my previous video I told you activities are basically emails. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on all activities and I'm going to filter it on email, and you see that it did a sort of test your mailbox is now activated, so that is also synchronized here. What I'm wondering is that I also sent an email here, but I haven't received it yet. But let's go to the queues and see if we can find it in the queue. Let's see if our guided channel setup is complete. Yes, it's set up. Next. Again, so this part you don't necessarily have to save and close, and you're done. Now that we have set up our auto case creation rules and it's complete, let's go back to home and see what we have. The idea is that the status should be completed. Yes, the guided channel has what it has done in the background. It has already created a sort of auto case creation rule for you where you can find it. And I think it's very important for you to know where to find it because tomorrow, if it doesn't work, you need to troubleshoot it. And as and when we progress now, it's going to get slightly bit more complicated. So your attention here, especially while you're setting it up, is super required. Otherwise, it would be hard for you to follow it. Okay, so where do we find our auto case creation rules? Um, Unfortunately, so far it's not added to customer service admin center. I'm not able to find it. But if you go under miscellaneous in the new and upcoming features, you need to make sure that this tab is checked in because there is one more place it could be found. And I'm going to open Customer Service Hub. And the Customer Service Hub is the app that you already know is used by the agents, and the Customer Service Admin Center is used by the agents, key users, or the one who administers and changes rules for your business. In this case, it would mostly be a functional consultant. If you're trying to be a functional consultant, that would be you, right? So what this checkbox does is it adds a service management section here, and here you have those auto case creation and update rules. So what Dynamics has created for you, when you did the when you use the guided process, it created an auto record creation rules. And you can create it also from here as well. You don't need to follow that path, but that's just something that's more central. It's a step-by-step process. So it really helps you if you do not know the details that are necessary to set up mailboxes, enable queues, and then create auto case creation rules. Otherwise, you would have been able to create it by pressing here. We'll see how we can also do that. I think if you do this, it shouldn't be a problem for you to be able to create your own auto case creation rules. But I'm going to open the one that's created for us. So it's like this. And when it's created for the first time, I would already recommend you to deactivate and look inside it because there are some settings you may need to change. So when I deactivate it, I do have the option to look into more details and also change it. And it's super important for us to see that, because what this is, the auto cascading rule is a combination of a Power Automate flow, and the Power Automate flow is the one who's doing the work for Dynamics. Power Automate flow is the one who's checking all the logics when the email comes in and creates a case for you. In this auto case creation rule, there are a few things we need to find, make sure that's important. It's capable of also sending auto reply to your customers. Like when you send an email to someone at info at company.com. So in this case, I'm going to start using the email address that I'm using, info at Ska-doosh.no. So let's say that's the company email address that I'm using to serve my customers when they have complaints or issues. I that email address can also directly send an automatic reply, and I can just use an existing email template that it needs to use. So I will say case auto. Yeah, I saw auto response. So this asterisk helps me respond. And now an email will also be automatically sent to them. So I can then use this and press save. So this is one of the additional settings that you may need to add when the auto case creation rule is created. And then on the advanced setting, Power Automate will not create anything if this setting is set to no, especially when the email address is an unknown sender. So you need to either make sure that you add that email address as a contact record if you want to test it, or you allow Power Automate to create a contact for you, because it can as well be the case that the email that is sent by the customer does not exist yet in Dynamics. That is more or less that happens a lot in organizations. So when you're setting auto case creation rules, this is one of the important questions that you ask to the business. Are all the email addresses that will be sending emails to this email addresses added as contact records or account records? If yes, then you don't need to set it to yes. If no, then you need to ask them if this should be added as a logic that if an email address doesn't exist in the database, should we automatically create them and link it to the case? Yeah. So if your auto case creation rule doesn't work, this may be the challenge. Yeah? And before I get into further details, I wanted to show you that we sent an email to this email address, and these are two emails that I sent. And in both emails, I asked the status of my delivery, and you see that Power Automate, that the emails were synchronized in Dynamics, super handy. They were also sent to my Outlook, but I don't need to navigate to my Outlook anymore. I can just work centrally from Dynamics. So that's the power of server-side synchronization that we enabled to receive emails also in Dynamics, right? What is the difference between the two emails is, if you carefully notice, this regarding field has been filled in. What that basically means is, and this I did on purpose so that you could see the difference of the auto case creation rules. If you don't have auto case creation rules enabled, you just receive an email like this, where you have a from, which is basically a user, and then you have a to, but the regarding field is filled in, which basically means no cases have been created. But in this case, the regarding field has been filled in. If you look here, so when I open this email, I can see that if I click on this record, it should basically be a case record. So what Power Automate did is, it fetched the title from the email and created it as a case. It got a unique identifier. It also mentioned the name of the customer, so yes, Pandey. It mentioned automatically the origin. But what you would also see is that the email that was sent is automatically linked. And now you don't have to go back to email addresses if you want to reply to the customer. You can just from here reply all, and an email will be created for you. So if you look at this, and in this case, if you want to use the same email address as the queue, what you can do is you can just change the from to this email queue, and then you can send an email. Thank you for your email. Your case has been created with case number blah. Yeah. Why I'm doing this is because I want to show you that the email chain that I mentioned already exists now. So you see, this email chain will continue to follow as you use this feature of replying and if the customer responds, that is directly reflected in the case. So you don't have to navigate anywhere else but stay on the case to see all the updates that are happening on the case. And this is proven to be quite efficient for agents. So this is a feature that if you are doing a demo or if you're having a discussion with your customer, you should definitely mention it because this really ranks high in terms of productivity. So I responded to the customer saying that we have received your issue and we'll respond back to you soon, and this is your case number. This can also be automated, and that's where I mentioned on your case creation rule. If you mention automatically reply yes, then the next email that I send to this um, yeah, to this shared mailbox will basically be, let me do that, info, where is my order? So next time, not only a case will be created when email will be received in Dynamics, but also an automatic reply to the customer will also be sent. So I've sent it now and we'll have a look at it later. Oh, sorry. This was supposed to be active for us, so I'm going to activate it and then I'm going to send an email again. So let me do that now. Where is my current order? I will not send it yet because it's still processing and activating. It's been activated now. So if I send an email now, the email should be received in Dynamics, but also, so now I need to switch back to from service management to service to have a look at my emails. And here is where I would expect the email to appear in all emails. One of the important things for you to remember is that by default, your view is my received emails, but you can always change it to any other view. So I change it to my emails, and that's why it's marked as default. But if you want to change something to a default, you just go here, select that view, and just go here, and then now my received emails becomes my default email. But now I'll change it back to this one because this is something that I use more often as a view. And the second thing to remember is that although the email will be sent a minute ago, sometimes server-side synchronization takes its sweet time, so 1 or 2 minutes, and especially considering this is a demo environment, it takes even longer. So yeah, so we'll wait for it to appear. In the meantime, we can talk more about the auto case creation rules. So I'll open one more window. This is an important subject, so I will really take my time to explain everything that is connected with this, so that you should know where everything appears. So auto case creation rule is here, and if you want to check the status of how it's functioning, you can always use an activity monitor, and the activity monitor will show you everything that has failed or not. So you can go on monitor options and you say, not only I want to see the ones that has failed, but that have a status of this one and this one. So you can also check them as well to see every single stages of when the auto case creation rule is functioning. All right, then let's go back to see if we have already received our email. And for that, I'll go back to activities. I'm doing these steps more and more because this is super important for us to realize that these are very essential artifacts of Dynamics customer service. So you should have a very good grasp of activities, to emails, to cases, to queues, to auto case creation rules. So now I see that where is my current order has already been there. It's already there. And I also see that a regarding case exists for this. So when I click on this, I see a case has already been created for me automatically. Where is my order? And when I click on case, you see that besides this one email, an email has also been sent to Dear Suyash Pandey. We have opened a case where is, is the current order for your request. One of your customer service representatives will call you shortly. Should you need to follow up this case, please contact us with case references. So this is so handy. The agent doesn't have to create this email with their own language. There is a default template. And Dynamics not only receives the emails in Dynamics, auto converts them into cases, sends an auto reply to the customer, and that's a lot of automation. Yeah? So if I want to show you how that email comes to me, because I also received that email on my email address, this is the email that I received. So I find this very, very cool because with absolutely no knowledge of development or Power Automate configuration, this is so far you can already get as a functional consultant. But this is not where we're going to stop. We're also going to look at other details for advanced customization because this is dedicated to this session. So we'll go further. But before we go there, we'll also see what is the way of working. Because we started off with a picture, right? So we started off with this. And how far we are and what we are still going to see, this is where it happens. So we were able to configure an email address as shared email address. We were able to synchronize that with Dynamics using server-side synchronization. I'm repeating this more and more because it needs to be there in your head. You need to really get a good grasp on this. And then the auto case creation from email to case. So that's also super important. We also not only saw that, we also saw how we can configure advanced setting, but also see how we can um, yeah send auto reply, and then we set up queues, we set up members, and how we add to a case to a queue manually and then automated way. So this is what we're going to see now. This is our connecting point towards queues. In Customer Service Hub, you have queues on this part, but you also have queues on this part. And they both have a very different view. This is a bit slight confusion that you can have when you start because this one actually does not show you queues. It shows you the items that are added in the queues. In the queues, you can have items such as cases and emails because queue is just like a queue how you'd expect when you go to a supermarket. There will be a queue, right, of of uh, of people. So there will be all kinds of people. In this case, you can have all kinds of records such as cases and emails. So in this case, what this view represents is items. It's basically it's showing you all the items that are added to your queue that you are a member of, right? And when you go to this queue, it shows you literally all the queues that exist in the system because a queue can be a queue that's related to a person because queue is a complicated topic. So I will talk a little bit about it. So please be a bit more attentive on this part because um, if you understand this, then a major chunk of your customer service problem is solved because queues is basically the way of working in Dynamics. So if I need to find my queue that I created, and I change the name to Platinum to make it something more sensible, so I can just say this is my Platinum queue. And in this queue, you see it's a record. You see the literal name of the queue that we created. On the other hand, the queues that we saw earlier, it should actually, if I click on this queue, the items that are added in the queue. And where you see that, on your right side, you'll see all the email addresses, all the emails that you've received in this. And you would see that for some of them, you also see work by Suyash, right? So this is very important. And how you can add members to a queue, you would see here. I've added here as Suyash, but let's see if I can also add, there are no records. Let's see if I can add anybody here, anyone else. No, I have to set up a user, but let's say if you have more users in your department, you can do that. And this queue record gives you a lot of overview, not only on the items or emails that you received in this queue because it's connected to this email, but also you would see how what is the email box that has been connected to it, and what is the auto case creation rule that is for this one, right? So this queue is very different than what you would see here. And it makes sense because in this queue, the user does not need to know the configurations of what exactly sits in a queue. So who are the members, and that's more for someone who is administering it and not someone who is working with the items that are added to the queue. So when I click on this queue, what I see is items I'm working on, which makes sense, right? I should be only focused on the things that I need to work on. And it only shows me items that I need to work on for the queues that I'm a member of. But you could always switch that between different queues if you want to select, or you can just say all queues or all public queues. And remember, if you don't see the items appearing here, because one of the settings that is important, especially when you create a queue, is that it needs to be a private queue. If you make it a public queue, you're going to have a hard time finding your queue items here. Okay, and how you can make something a private queue, and that's why I was switching. If you go back to your queues, and I can search for platinum again. This needs to be private. If it's public, then you're not going to find these items in that queue. So I'm going to go back to from now. So we saw the admin part so far. Now we're going to see how an agent would work with queues. So when they click on this queue, they would see items I'm working on, which is handy. And when I'm complete, I can just mark the cases as closed and then it will not appear. But they can also say, I want to see cases available to work on because I want to pick on more. And that's when you see this. And you see that it's not being picked up by anyone. But the moment I pick it, it will disappear. So I can pick it up from here. So this is how you can work with queues. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to release, I'm going to go back, case available to work, sorry, items I'm available to work on. Sorry, items I'm working on. Yes. So I'm going to remove this from my list. I'm going to release them and put them back to the queue. And we're going to see how we can, not in this view, because, so where is my current order? But what I can do is I can also manually add cases. So if I go back to one of these cases and I say, I want to add this case to that queue, all I need to do is just select this case and say, add to queue. And when I do that, I have the option to fill in what queue I want to select. So you type platinum and you select it and you say add to queue. If I go back to my queue, I will see what are some coffee machines cleaning case appear for me to work on because it was added to the queue that I am a part of. So if I say cases available to work on, it will appear here. So this is how you can manually add something in a queue. And for the automated part, what we need to set up is we need to set up routing rules and how it was already set up for us. But there are also other ways to do that. I find routing rules preferable, but routing rules are something that I'm going to discuss in a separate session. And I'm going to also show you how the auto case creation rule automatically creates a case and how we can add something directly there in the automate flow to, to push it to a queue. Okay. So this was the way of working for queues. And now we go back to our service management because that's where we can also see our auto case creation rules. And I'm going to deactivate it because as a functional consultant, and this is going to become a slightly bit more technical, and this is also a good connect for you to understand how Power Automate works. So when I deactivate it, now I have the option to edit it. What this auto case creation rule means is it's a rule. Its name is this. You can give it any name. I can also change it to Platinum Case Creation Rule, which means that this is the rule that takes care of all the emails that are meant for Platinum. And here you can specify the condition. So Dynamics automatically adds one condition for you, which just says, which you should see here, email message contains data. But here you can also say, add a row and use any field property. And this is where it gets technical, right? If you say that if the origin origin is not a field. Oh yeah, let's use a different field. Let's say if the priority of the email is high, then route it to the platinum queue, right? And that's how, whenever an email comes in, and if it is of high priority, it will be added to this queue. But remember, if any other case comes in, it will not be, sorry, the case will not be created for them and it will not be added to the queue. So you need to be very careful with these conditions because these conditions are going to decide on the behalf of the user for which kind of emails I need to convert them to cases. And at the last section, you will see that there's also a save and open Power Automate. And when I click here, it basically routes me to the Power Automate that is connected with this record creation rule record. So here I'm gonna be talking on a very high level because it might get too technical. But all you need to do is if you want to default route any case creation coming to a queue to a certain queue, or even use conditions to route them to a different queue, you can just add further conditions or steps here. In principle, essentially what you need to create is a new row in Dataverse for the table queue item. So you need to add a new record for the queue item, specify what queue it needs to be added to, and specify the identifier of this of the case that has been created. So this one, and then the case is added to the queue. It's as simple as that, right? But we're not going to get into the detail because again, it's too technical. And when I talk more about Power Automate, then we can discuss that. However, there's one more sweet way, like I mentioned earlier, using routing rules, and they are a better way of doing that. But routing rules in itself is also a new concept, requires enough time, so I cannot show that to you in this video in the next 5 minutes. But I hope this makes sense. I want to quickly summarize what we did, what we saw. We saw shared mailboxes. We saw how an email is sent to a generic email address of a company and how it's synchronized with Dynamics. How a case is automatically created for it. How you send auto replies for that. How you set up queues. How you add members to them, and how that case is added to that queue. Right. And one more thing before I leave, please, 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 if you're working with customer service, this video is super important for you. Having a grasp of auto case creation rules, cases, queues is fundamental. If you miss out that I have left out on any of the content, and if you want to have more information on one of the content, please leave a comment and I can make more extensive videos on concepts. But yeah, that's it for today's video. Happy learning.